I think I will stay in true crime because we already have a bit of a community here, and I think hopefully, if you guys follow me, you care about trying to learn other things that we can claim to know about in science and philosophy that apply to your ability to think about true crime and about human psychology and about even the behavior that we see on what I would call this true crime bandwagon. So my role here since the beginning has been to bring these intellectual skills, these scientific and philosophical skills and knowledge to true crime to help you guys get better at being able to be a better consumer of true crime and to be able to direct your energies in those areas that are more value added and to for us all to work together to try to disable or minimize the consequences of what we can hopefully find agreement on in terms of bad acting, bad ways of being, and bad ways of handling true crime, and then promoting those who do care. But it's not enough to just care and be sincere. There needs to be a certain understanding of ethics. There needs to be a certain treatment of these delicate topics surrounding true crime, which need to be brought to bear for anyone with a concern for victim advocacy and the coverage of true crime. And so I definitely think there are plenty of people in this space that are sincere and really care. They want to do something. They're bothered by human harm and by dangerous behavior, and and they feel an urge, an uncontrollable attraction to use their voice to have an impact. And so I don't doubt for a minute that a lot of people in this space are sincere and care. My problem is not just the unscrupulous bad actors. My concern is bad acting. And unfortunately, bad acting can come from the sincere and the well-intentioned. As we all know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's not enough to sincerely care. You need to also develop the skills and the ethics that I think should be prerequisites for this space, especially if you're monetized and you have a large audience of people who are impressionable, who are going to listen to you. It's not enough to just assert that you care about human suffering and human flourishing. You need to be able to bring the a capacity to handle the topic in the same way that somebody who cares about human health, we don't just let them do brain surgery. And there are good reasons why we don't let them do brain surgery. Even if these people have a huge concern for alleviating the consequences of brain dysfunction. So it's not enough to care. You also need to have the skills that are relevant. And I never claimed that you need to have a fancy letters next to your name, or that people without the prerequisite expertise can't come into this space and add value. I've never suggested that. As we've just learned, a PhD student just possibly murdered four innocent people. So I'm always trying to be careful about this is not about a dogmatic preference for higher education and a sort of elitism that only people with fancy letters and CVs can speak about anything relevant to the human project. Not at all. But if you don't have a background in it, learn it and 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 make the effort to do it well. And if you are a professional, I mean, then we have other examples of people in this space that do have the cred, and they exploit that cred in a very disingenuous and arguably dangerous method or fashion. So obviously, you guys can imagine maybe my thinking here is relative to someone like Fish McDonish, a character like Fish McDonish, or other people in this space that have fancy schmancy credentials, but don't either they're over their skis or outside of their area of expertise, or they're just being exploitative and they're only really interested in social media attention and or money. Just so you guys understand, I'm not a true crime channel. So I'm interested in as a social scientist by formation and attitude and the early part of my experience. By the way, those people that attempted to somehow insult me because I'm an accountant, wrong. I mean, for all of that background check that you guys wasted your time running on me, you could have just looked at my initial video when I came here, letting you know of my past and my career. I have very little to hide. It hasn't been a very interesting life, but I have had some interesting experiences. And yes, I began as a social scientist working for several UN organizations. So apparently, the way to discredit me because there's nothing scandalous in my record or my CV was that I'm somehow lying about my assertion that I have a social science background or that I was, in fact, engaged and hired as a social scientist at the beginning of my career. Sorry, but that's true. I, you know, and so I'm going to talk about some things tonight, like, for example, just post truth at a large scale. Thank you, AK. You're always way too generous. Um, this revenge of the layperson thesis that I've been developing for the better part of a decade, and this sort of decline into a rather consistent sort of anti-intellectual attitude in greater society. And I've talked about a lot of the reasons, or at least the potential causes for the period that we're living in. I call it the revenge of the layperson, or post truth, or runaway relativism, whichever phrase you like, or come up with your own. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that this tonight, and yeah, in terms of those who apparently didn't like being called out and have tried to, you know, troll me at best, with veiled threats from puppet accounts, and then somebody who came into my chat room on my last live using my full name with a picture of my dead friend to intimidate me and obviously let me know that they have found my personal profile page on Facebook. None of that's going to work. Um, I've been doing this for a long time. This is my labor of love, trying to educate and teach critical thinking and to try to promote positive ethics. And you're not going to stop me. You're going to have to do something rather egregious to stop me. I've already let you guys know who I am. It's really was never a totally big issue. I was always aware that if somebody was really determined to figure out who the fuck I am, it's not that hard. On my Facebook page, if you really were bored and dedicated to trying to figure out who I am, there are clues and there are pictures of me and my mother. And if you did a reverse image search or something like that, you'd find me. I have nothing to hide. It's just it was never about me, the person. It's about hopefully the ideas and values that I promote. That's why I am a brain of vat to promote my central intellectual value, which is epistemic humility, to be careful and thoughtful about the things that you believe and claim to know, and to be careful or even more careful when you are trying to influence other people to share your beliefs. Um, Try to be responsible about what you try to convince other people of. Again, part of my sort of ongoing thesis of this revenge of the layperson era, this idea that the world is becoming increasingly divided, um, tribal, antagonistic, that our institutions are under threat, possibly democracy itself, a liberal democracy is under threat, that we might be on the cusp of transitioning to a period that we're not that either we've already experienced in our past many times, something like authoritarianism or illiberalism, um, or something completely new. Now, maybe that's hyperbolic, maybe it's exaggerated, maybe we're just going through a rough patch, and we've gone through rough patches before, and we will recover, and we will get back to something resembling normalcy or something that we're more aware of, where we can find more areas to agree and to be kind to each other, and that we can either reform our institutions where they need reformation, or that we can find again a respect for um, knowledge and our best ways of acquiring knowledge, and an agreement on facts, and a respect for expertise and certain institutions. We're in true crime, an actual concern for justice, and a repudiation of vigilantism and anarchism and a disdain for expertise, um, because I've worried about these things for a long time, and that's why I came here. Hopefully, not to be a Debbie Downer, but to just possibly help, um, bring to the table in this space, very tried and true um, methods for evaluating truth claims, and trying to bring again our understanding of formal logic, and trying to identify things like logical fallacies and all of the cognitive bugs that we have, our cognitive biases that may have served us well in our ancient past, but might not do as much good work these days in our modern technological world. Um, so, so yeah, I mean, scientific skeptics, as I said in my introduction video, were not very um, well liked at cocktail parties, which is why I always make the joke I don't wear my scientific skeptic hat in my real life, because I don't want to just go around offending people or criticizing their beliefs or saying, you know, did you know that the thing that you just claimed that you believe is just untrue? And we've looked at the science, and it's an urban legend, and it's not backed up by the science, and this is pseudoscience woo woo nonsense. I don't do that in my private life, but in a public life, I think that it's important that we do that. And before I forget, one of the things that I noticed, and because I think I've finally figured out how Twitter works. I've never really used Twitter, but one of the things I noticed was that I think, and tell me if you agree, I think more and more people are fed up with the just overt, irresponsible behavior of the gazillions of people who have jumped into this bandwagon phenomenon of true crime coverage, for social media clout and for clicks and views and money. I think more and more of us are disturbed and noticing that these aren't one offs. These aren't your odd, rare asshole, some selfish idiot who can't find anything better to do than just turn on his cam and give his opinion on stuff. It's it's organized, it's orchestrated, it's large scale. It arguably is crowding out any good that um, modern online true crime, social media true crime coverage um, is or can do. And so, I've made some really interesting alliances. I've made alliances ironically because I've said for a while, I would totally understand if a true crime channel would want nothing to do with me. They might not trust me. They might think I'm a troublemaker. They might think that eventually they're going to get on my bad actors list, and that's what I'm all about, is just being an asshole, know it all, who just comes into this space uninvited, to tell everybody that they're idiots and they don't know what they're doing. I hope that I don't come off that way to any of you. But I could totally appreciate how somebody who doesn't know anything about me or my work or my writing or my background might not want to trust me like that. I totally get that. And yet my alliances have come from two camps. Well, maybe three camps. People who are curious and open minded and want to learn, many of you, and who share many of my values. And true crime channels who recognize that it is a threat to their credibility and to their desire to help and have impact and protect people and minimize the incidence of harm and protect innocent victims and provide support for people who have already been victimized, for people who suffer from any of a basket of different traumatic experiences, whether it's the victim of flagrant crime or just some sort of psychological or physical abuse. And so my alliances have come from interesting quarters, from people that recognize that there are true crime bad actors. There is a phenomenon, a bandwagon effect. Been a vacuum that's just because true crime is so visceral to us. It's so ingrained in our nature to care about knowing w- w- what a criminal mind is, what criminal behavior is, what we can do to prevent it. What can I learn about myself through the lens of bad and harmful human behavior? So, because of this sort of universal allure and appeal of true crime, people recognize that that means it is a viral phenomenon and will always be a viral phenomenon. There will always be people who want to know about these things and who will take an interest in true crime. It's true crime has always been just crime, and criminal psychology have always been um, fascinating to humans, and they always will be. Thank you, Bo. And so it's in that sense then that it now has become a commodity. It's been commoditized. So there is money to be made on the back of this universal human interest in crime, criminal behavior, and criminal psychology. So it's not a mystery why it's popular, and it will always be popular. The only difference here is the ease and access that people have to contribute to the conversation, and they can monetize it, and their they can create a name for themselves and make money, and so that's what's changed in this game. Before, you needed to have the capital and the resources to start a network, or create a television show, or be a journalist who can write for a large journal or newspaper or magazine. Um, and now it's available to everyone. And so that's what's changed. The internet, and social media and platforms like, um, YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and all the others that allow us to then make money by giving our opinion on something that pretty much everybody on this planet cares about to some extent. The kindred spirits that I've found in this space, since I'm a bit of an outlier, um, are people who share my curiosity to learn about the world and about human brains and how groups of people and individuals behave, our ultimate nature, um, and who have a concern for moral reasoning and how to improve things. And then true crime channels that also share my vested interest in trying to call out and minimize and crowd out bad acting, and because it's in their interest and they are equally disturbed by it. And so I'm glad they're not afraid of me, because I'm not just out here going after anybody and everybody. I'm very careful about who I choose to criticize and how I go about criticizing people. I make sure to try to be fair and not misrepresent anybody's behavior or position. And so the other group, and so like last night, I for the most part don't go hang out and watch channels or go into chat rooms, but there are a few exceptions. And last night I found myself in a channel called just uh, Jonesin. Sorry, the channel is Jonesin. So for those who know, I don't know why, but in the last few days when it was cold, I found myself um, looking at some of the the clip pages that share my interest in being disgusted by so many bad actors. And so what I can't really do anymore, that I don't really have much of a stomach anymore to do, is go listen to these people and clip them and keep holding them accountable and providing a record for their behavior. Um, so 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 I found myself in a chat last night with some people I know, people I've heard of, and we had a good time roasting some bad actors. Maybe we had too much fun, but it was interesting because there was some camaraderie in there. So my hat goes off to all those who um, have the time and the stomach to try to call out this bad acting. I need support. They need support. We need to spread the risk. We need to have a larger collective interest in differentiating between good acting and bad acting, pointing out the bad acting, no longer enabling bad acting, and promoting good acting because it needs to be a group effort. We're going to talk about not just some specific bad actors, but maybe some just larger phenomena that contributes to bad acting or that doesn't do anything to prevent bad acting. Cell asks, do you think this phenomenon, bad acting, is unique to true crime, or do you see fairly similar behavior, unscientific approach, harassment, stalking, etc.? No, and thank you so much for asking me that question because one of the points I want to make, I mean, I have made it before, but I want to make it tonight too. I might even read a couple of my recent essays. One is sort of a work in progress. I haven't finished it, but it was just some ideas that I had the other night. Is that, as I always say, YouTube true crime or social media true crime is just a microcosm for me. It's just a case study for me. It's just a conversation about human psychology and human sociology. And it is applicable to pretty much almost all domains. So all of the bad acting that we see in this space is very similar to bad acting elsewhere. So it's applicable to social media behavior as a whole. As a scientific skeptic, this is just an extension of what I keep saying is that this is just an extension of victim advocacy or consumer advocacy, which is a role of scientific skepticism to help people evaluate truth claims, to be able to differentiate between nonsense and opinion and editorial and facts, to be able to promote the values of science and intellectualism and formal logic, and critical thinking and reasoning, and to differentiate it from rubbish and from ill-informed opinion and from exploitation and opportunism and ignorance and everything that parades out there as something value added to our lives. And so scientific skeptics just try to engage in the human conversation and try to say, like, no, you probably don't want to take that fake medicine. No, you probably don't want to buy that product. It probably doesn't work. No, you probably don't want to listen to this sophist. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's just trying to manipulate you for his own gain. We try to expose snake oil salesmen and charlatans and pseudoscience peddlers and bad paranormal claims and bad metaphysical claims and all of the different manifestations of human irrationality, so that hopefully we can have rational conversations about the things that are more likely true and things that are less likely true, and conversations about how we should best spend our time and our money and our energy towards making the world a better place, or at least preventing it from getting worse. So the answer to your question is everything I see in true crime is completely what I see everywhere else. It's just that we are in a true crime space. So we try to address it in that context, but it's simply a case study. It's simply a microcosm of larger scale human phenomena, and is applicable in so many other cases. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm going to bring up media. I mean, so a few of the things I want to talk about tonight. I want to sort of again develop this Revenge of the Layperson thesis. I want to talk about sort of in this Revenge of the Layperson thesis that I always talk to you guys about, um, the sort of the rise of the troll, the rise of certain dishonest tactics in this modern social media world that really disturb me. And so I have maybe a short essay I want to maybe read, which is a bit um, maybe a bit scary, but I think it's sort of indicative of our times that it just seems like now we no longer have a concern for intellectual values, for a concern for the truth, a concern for the facts, and that it just seems like it's this world of idiocracy where reality is being determined by referendum, by popularity contests, by the amount of clicks and views that somebody has, by the amount of toys that people have, the amount of money they have, the amount of power they have, and truth and reality shouldn't have doesn't have anything to do with those things. Things are either true or they're not. Something is either a fact or it isn't. It doesn't matter who is presenting the claim. It doesn't matter if they're a billionaire. It doesn't matter if they're a president. It doesn't matter if they're a popular celebrity or a popular social media influencer. We shouldn't be making our decisions based on popularity contests or Zavgirl polls or the amount of likes and views that something gets. We should be trying to appeal to intellectual values and um, um, have a concern for what is more likely and what is less likely, because it has absolutely nothing to do with what kind of car you drive or the degree you have after your name or how many followers you have on your page or how many people vote believing that something is true or not. Exactly. Alternative facts aren't real. There's no such thing as alternative facts. I want to try to somehow bring it together. I'm not sure if I can or if I'll do it justice. But there's some interesting things in the context of this Revenge of the Layperson, this post-truth era, this runaway relativism, whatever you want to call it, nihilism, misanthropy. There's a whole bunch of words we can use to describe it. But I might use some case studies tonight in terms of some people. So the phenomenon is sort of maybe I'm going to call it the rise of the troll. Now the troll is nothing new. Trolling is nothing new, but trolling I think now is a tactic that's increasingly being employed by people by ambitious people that are not necessarily scrupulous. It's an ends justifies the means marketing approach to succeeding in this world. And I don't think it's a moral, responsible way of being in this world. And I think we should all worry about it, given our the amount of time spent on social media and on the internet, and how big of an influence social media has on brains and our children and our future and our societies. So when I talk about the revenge of the layperson, um, I think now, and oftentimes I say, the revenge of the layperson in some way, to use sort of some metaphorical, poetic language, is sort of that, the commoner, the layperson. By the way, we're all laypersons. We're all laypersons to the overwhelming majority of truth claims. So we might each have an expertise, but we are all laypersons to all of the things that we don't have an expertise in. So maybe I know a few things in some areas, but I don't know more things about more areas because I have no formal education. I haven't spent much of my time looking into them. So I have to depend on other people who have developed these skills. And I try to defer where relevant, where appropriate, to not just think that to fall in love with my own brain, my own ideas, and believe that I know better than the world's experts and an overwhelming, scientific consensus. I have a hard time being that arrogant. And so in this sort of context of the revenge of the layperson, it's sort of like, you know, throughout time, us as laypersons, the hoi polloi, the peons, the plebs. We didn't have much power in the big scheme of things. The people who had somehow accumulated land and power and military authority and divine rights of kings and had somehow risen to the top of the hierarchy of human power and wealth, dictated to us, what we could and couldn't do, if we could live or not, if we could just be randomly detained by the powers that be and thrown into a dungeon or tortured or murdered or all of our family members raped and pillaged and so in that sense then the layperson, the peon, the plebs, all of us didn't necessarily have much political autonomy, bodily autonomy, social autonomy in historically speaking. So I can imagine that there's been a sort of pent up animosity towards the powers that be. And so it's in this context then that the revenge of the layperson seems to be very much sort of a bottom up rebellion against the system, the man, whatever you want to call it. So if you're on the conspiracy spectrum, you're going to talk about the Illuminati and the global elite and the lizard people and the deep state and the New World Order and the Bilderberg Group and the Rothschilds and all of these you know groups of people that sit around in Gestad drinking expensive, bourbon and rolling furiously their mustaches and petting their black cats, planning to kill us all or use some sort of mind control technology to manipulate us. So I think then, and obviously I've talked a lot about conspiracy theories and the rise and allure of conspiracy theories and why they appeal to us and at which points they appeal to us. Of course, Siamese cats. I love Siamese cats. So I think then, given our history, where we've come from, and then this sort of growing disillusionment with the system and our institutions, a sort of nihilism and almost complete abandonment of all of our hard fought epistemic and institutional gains over thousands of years. I think people have given themselves over to a certain sort of cynicism and nihilism and relativism and just sort of abject distrust of everything. And so it's in that sense then that with the rise of the internet and our ability to use our individual voices to find people that will listen to us in a way that was never possible, I sort of refer to this revenge of the layperson as just that suddenly it's the plebs, it's the hoi polloi, it's the layperson sort of deciding that we are going to burn it all down and we're going to replace the world with something more in alignment with our image of how the world should be. Thank you, Juju. And I'm concerned about that. So I definitely believe a lot of our institutions need to be reformed, and we should be cynical and critical of all sorts of institutions that might have failed us in many ways, whether it's government systems or politicians or corporations or education systems or any of our sort of fundamental central institutions that took us thousands of years of trial and error to develop. Um, So there is plenty of legitimate criticism to be leveled at our societies, at our systems, at our institutions, at our experts. I always sort of say, be careful what you wish for. If you truly want to burn it down, if you think there's nothing redeeming that should be saved or just reformed, then be careful what you're asking for. Be careful of the world that you wish to create. So, I mean, if overthrowing the powers that be means, the sort of the lords of unreason come to power and then make our world in their own self-image, I'm not sure that I'm not sure at all that that's a better world. That world scares me. There are good. I mean, there's a thing in the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, that we might have the belief that things are stable and they're resilient. But don't forget very fundamental law of physics, entropy, that systems are easier to break than they are to build. So it took us thousands of years to get here. Please don't take lightly a sort of complete abandonment of our our civilization, the civilization that took us a long time to build. It's not a perfect one. But I think starting from scratch and reinventing the wheel and letting the lords of unreason become our new masters, I'm not sure that that's a better world at all. So, in that context, then, I maybe want to talk about sort of this rise of the troll, sort of in that same vein, that given the importance of popularity, social popularity, the sort of extension of Andy Warhol's 15 minutes of fame, um, has now sort of reached, cosmic proportions. And the tactics that are being employed to gain this power, whether it's Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Andrew Tate or this politician George Santos, completely relying on trolling tactics, unscrupulous methods of getting attention, exploiting the algorithms, exploiting human divisiveness and conflict in order to get a maximum of eyeballs and clicks and views and therefore revenue and money, and social power, is frightening. The lie, a well-known propaganda technique, something as simple as the lie, the grosse Lüge in German, is becoming a way of being. And so why would anybody just become a troll, literally like a professional troll? Because it works, everyone. Outrage people, infuriate people, say provocative shit, fuck ethics, fuck being responsible with the things you say, fuck caring about the downstream ramifications of what you say. Just let it rip, piss people off, infuriate everybody, pit everybody against each other. I guarantee you that approach will get you more views than being careful, than being thoughtful, than being open-minded, than treating complex topics with the nuance that they deserve without doing the hard work of trying to learn what we can say about certain things. Fuck that. Just play on human emotion and susceptibility and exploit that for your own gain, and be shameless. You know, he who gets the most toys at the end of the day wins. Get your piece of the pie. Stab somebody in the back before they stab you. This sort of nihilistic, cynical view on human nature, and attitudes that I think are very, very dangerous for our civilization, are flourishing, and they're flourishing not only in the true crime space. That's why I said, to answer your question before, this is a ubiquitous problem that we all have to confront. So there's a reason why someone like Andrew Tate um, became, one of the most talked about names on the planet because he exploited these algorithms. He paid people to promote him on all the platforms. He said things that he knew were culture hot points that would get every culture war hot points that would get everybody to fight, which creates more activity, which creates more distribution, which feeds into the way that the algorithms are built on social media and leads to a fuckload of um, of attention directed towards you, and all for your own gain. You are going if your name is in everybody's mouth, whether for good or for bad, that translates now into popularity, into likes and views and subscribers. So yeah, and so we can just see it more and more. So whether it's Donald Trump who employed the tactic of just the constant lie and just inflaming and infuriating everybody, or or Elon Musk trolling on his new Twitter platform because he's got way too much money and gets his kicks out of annoying people that he finds silly and lesser than, or this Andrew Tate, or now this new guy who just got elected to the American Congress by just lying about his entire personality. One of the things that I found very interesting was that I was noticing more and more tweets from people who are as disgusted as we are about the true crime, irresponsible behavior. I saw more and more tweets from people saying, now all of the goddamn true crime channels that were out there accusing innocent people left and right and claiming to have insight or intuition or frickin' paranormal epistemic access to the truth in the Idaho 4 should all have egg on their face and should all be embarrassed and should all apologize and should all learn a lesson from the fact that this guy was on nobody's frickin' radar, nowhere, nothing. And anybody who claims that he was on their radar had it wrong. Um, and it's a great case study this time that it wasn't somebody that anybody could reasonably guess. It just wasn't. And so it should make us all second guess our attitudes and criticism towards police and their utter, their apparent lack of transparency and their seeming incompetence, because at the end of the day, even though it maybe took a little bit longer than people would like, they may very well have gotten the bad guy. And it shouldn't matter if it takes 2 days or it takes 3 months. What matters is that you get the right guy, you can get justice for the families, and you can frickin' close the case, and then you can get a successful conviction. That's what should matter to people if they truly care about justice. So, I think it's a good case study for us. But, we're going to talk about again in 2022 just how well the true crime community did in terms of adding value to any of the viral cases, and whether or not you and I believe that the net effect of this modern online true crime frenzy, the piranha attack of just everybody and their sister starting a YouTube channel or an Instagram account or Twitter account to give their frickin' opinion on who the bad guy is, where the boogie monster is, what what blurry images in a picture are the smoking gun clue that's going to break open the case. I'm pretty sure if you look critically, you may just come to the same conclusion that I have, that on the whole, this modern phenomenon of social media true crime is not resulting in positive outcomes. It's not solving crimes. It's not behaving as a responsible victim advocate. It is not on the net helping law enforcement, um, providing them with meaningful tips and clues that are getting bad guys, and protecting victims, and a concern for justice being served. It's creating tons of innocent victims. It's overwhelming our already limited law enforcement resources and systems and networks. I think on the whole, you may come to the same conclusion that I have, that on the net, it is a detriment to a concern for justice. It is a detriment to a concern for human flourishing and well being and minimizing harm and protecting innocent people. I think on the whole, it's a detriment. And some people have misunderstood that and strawman me to mean that I think that there are no value added, thoughtful, helpful contributors to true crime. And I categorically and on the record have said the exact opposite. It is by virtue of having this conversation that we can dig through the weeds and find the good apples and crowd out the bad apples. But you know, I challenge any of you to convince me that the good apples are doing more positive work than the bad apples are canceling out and adding putrid applesauce. Excuse me, the poor metaphor. Um, as I say, the putrid sausage factory. So, um, but we'll try to sum up some of my concerns about the phenomena that I notice in terms of this rise of the troll, because I think these Elon Musks and the tactics being employed by people like Elon Musk and Andrew Tate and this George um, George Santos, I think his name is, and you know all of the other millions of social media influencers who've just had a banner year in 2022, and to the tune of they're making millions and millions and millions of dollars with millions and millions and millions of views and subscribers, and they're employing the same tactics. They don't give a fuck about the truth. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about anyone but themselves. And this is just a marketing approach to gaining power, making money, um, and and satisfying Andy Warhol's 15 minutes of fame. The big distinction is Andy Warhol predicted a future where everyone would have their 15 minutes of fame, not recognizing that in the near future, people would be able to turn that 15 minutes of fame meme into a livelihood, a very lucrative livelihood, a livelihood that can translate into massive political power. I mean, if you don't think an, some social media influencer is going to become the president someday, it used to be we made jokes about it was an actor. Well, we've already crossed that bridge. Um, we're going to have a Kim Kardashian sort of president one of these days. We're going to have a Andrew Tate a president one of these days. We already had a sort of Donald Trump, but Donald Trump more because of his celebrity, on TV. But you're going to have social media. I mean, you're going to have like, you know, PewDiePie sort of presidents. You're going to have, it's going to look more like idiocracy. Your panel of experts, your cabinet as a president is going to be, social media influencers. It's going to be people that know how to exploit human emotion and make an idea go viral. It's not going to be You're not going to have economic experts and uh, and infrastructure experts and transportation experts. You're just going to have a frickin' team of sophists and social media manipulators, marketers, and lawyers. Of course, got to have lawyers. So it's in that sense that our children are not necessarily being influenced these days by positive role models. I mean, if you think these people are positive role models, if you think Andrew Tate is a positive role model for your male children, I mean, I agree. I try to be fair in my political positions in terms of my criticism for the left versus the right. And I have concerns and have made very vocal my concerns about the problem of the modern left and my concerns about the modern right. And there are some authoritarian tendencies coming from both sides, and some trends that I find rather alarming from both camps, certainly on the extremes. Um, but this Andrew Tate guy, for example, he's made a freaking killing by appealing to the culture war concept that men are all being vilified. And I have some legitimate um, sympathy for that argument. I do think that in the social justice wars, the sort of progressive movement towards enhanced fairness and enhanced equality, in many cases with any social justice movement, you have what's called a pendulum effect, where an otherwise valid cause or movement can become extreme, or at least at the limits. So I do think that because of the legacy of male white um, dominance in politics and business and professionalism and all sorts of other fields, that there has been a sort of backlash towards that orthodoxy, towards that dominant position for centuries and centuries and centuries. And I think that that has led to a bit of rather illiberal attitudes. I mean, if you hate somebody because they're white, or you hate somebody because they're a man, that's not a liberal position at all. Now, if the person is a bigot or they're a misogynist or they're an asshole, then by all means, give them what they deserve. But if by virtue of just their skin color or the genitalia that they're born with, you're vilifying them and you don't have good reasons for it, that's not liberal. And nobody likes to be mistreated, especially when they don't feel like they've done anything wrong. So I think someone like Andrew Tate, someone like Jordan Peterson, they've exploited that that issue because now there's a bunch of men out in the world who feel like they're not being treated fairly, and I think there's a historical reason why that is. But I think that we should have a concern for our young boys and men and make sure that they're not unfairly vilified simply by virtue of things that they have no control over. So I think people like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, they've exploited that void, that gap, the whatever the poor white boy needs a champion because nobody's on his side anymore. And I sort of get that. I have some sympathy for that. But they're exploiting it for their own interests. They're not necessarily doing it for any legitimate reason. So I think it's just a niche that's been filled. And so, we should have a bit of a concern. But if you think Andrew Tate is is a proper role model for young men, um, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. I think we've fought for a long time to not raise boys to be a fucking asshole like Andrew Tate and treat women like lesser than sexual objects that he can play with his wealth, fame, and muscle. And to try to teach other boys that women should be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen again, bringing them a sandwich. Sorry. I'm pretty sure that we've done a pretty decent amount of work to try to make sure that we don't raise our boys to be frickin' Andrew Dice Clay. So for any Andrew Tate fans in the room, you throw out the word Matrix, or you bring in that sort of cult BS, you won't have a good time. So in that sense, then we got some sort of good news at the end of the year. You know, we have further confirmation that Donald Trump is a liar, as if we needed any more, about his taxes and his donations and his giving away his salary. Um, there's hopefully some signs that there is going to be some payback for the frickin' failed Three Stooges coup attempted against the strongest democracy in the world. Um, and we got George Santos, who is yet to pay any consequences for just completely inventing a persona and again playing on the culture wars and the political divide, pretending to be a Jew, pretending that his parents survived the Holocaust, pretending maybe even that he was gay, pretending that he worked for large corporations, that he is rich, and then to sort of abdicate any true, sincere sense of remorse or formal apology. And he doesn't seem to be paying any consequence. Although it looks like when they look into his finances, I'm pretty sure they're going to find some illegality. Um, and then we have at the end of the year a sort of Schadenfreude moment where Andrew Tate is now likely um, going to spend some time in a Romanian jail. Although presumption of innocence, but 30 days detention pretty much suggests to me that they likely have some pretty good, solid evidence on this guy. And so, yeah, there might be some more things I want to talk about if you guys want to talk about these things. But I think then these people for me represent this phenomenon I'm talking about successful trolling and how well it is working and how there are just no consequences to be paid for being a dishonest, immoral piece of shit in this world. And I'm pretty sure that if we're going to be determining moral behavior and responsible behavior and how we want to create our civilization based on Zavgirl, Elon Musk polls on, like let's take a poll on the laws of physics. All right, let's take a poll on treatments for cancer, and just let's let the laypersons decide on how um, to implement policy on an international scale to deal with the once in a century novel pandemic. Let's take a poll on whether the Earth is flat or an oblate spheroid. Let's take a poll on whether or not 1 + 1 = 2. Let's just make it all a nihilistic referendum, and let's rely on ignorant morons who don't know a damn thing about the topic at hand. And I include myself as one of these ignorant morons when it comes to how to develop um, successful treatments for any of the different numbers of cancer or heart disease that that kill more people than anything else on the planet. I am a fucking moron, and I shouldn't be voting on how to set a broken leg, or how to give somebody CPR, or how to remove an appendix. Um, I shouldn't be voting on that because I don't know fuck all about that. Um, and I'm pretty sure that most of us don't know fuck all about most complex topics. So a bit of respect for our law enforcement to enforce the laws and get evidence to bring people up in front of a court, in front of a jury of their peers to adjudicate on whether they've committed a crime, and not Betty Bullhorn, um, or Jonathan Lee Riches or Chris McDonough for that matter. Let's not vote on things that can be empirically decided, that rely on an accumulation and analysis of facts by people that actually do that sort of thing. Um, so, actually, on that note, because I often use the line about, um, you know, this runaway relativism, reduces down to basically a pilot and a neurosurgeon are both equally likely, or that we can't say which one is more likely to land your plane, a 747, safely, or that we can't say anything about who is more likely to remove a malignant brain tumor, a pilot or a seasoned brain surgeon. That's the sort of relativistic world we're moving in, where all claims are equally valid, equally plausible. All opinions are equally valid and informed. That truth and fact are no different than subjective opinion, intuition, or gut feeling. I don't think we want to live in a world with those beliefs. And I'm pretty sure that if you think through it sufficiently, you might agree with me. And so I often use the common argument of pilots and brain surgeons, but I'm going to use another one from my Facebook channel that I posted since somebody said they read Stephen Novella, one of my intellectual influences, and somebody I was supposed to work with, God damn it. Um, Let me share a meme that I got from them the other day, which makes the same argument that I'm making right now, but instead of pilots and brain surgeons. So the first guy says, I am a computer engineer and I affirm that the earth is flat. And then another person comes back and says, I am a geologist and I say that computers work because there are very small people inside doing all of the work. So hopefully you get the joke and see the relativism problem here. Do you want me to go to my essay on sort of the rise of the troll and this modern social media age of post truth? I've been in a bad mood. So after, basically in the month of December getting doxxed by more than one person, getting veiled physical threats of violence, having somebody, multiple people coming into my chat room and whatever, trying to discredit me, using the lying about me, using the picture of my dead friend, a smear campaign petition against me and tons of you, as well as other legitimate true crime channels and decent people, and then more smear articles written about us. And then, finding out that Chris McDonough's got a frickin' private investigator pit bull on my ass, running background checks on me, lying about my credentials. That didn't put me in a very chipper state of mind. And I think rightfully, justifiably so, because I used arguments and reason and their own behavior against them. There was then an orchestrated, fairly large scale attack against me. Again, make your fucking videos. I make videos. I use words. I make arguments. If you don't fucking like me, that's fine. You don't have to like me. Make videos. Insult me and and make me into a cartoon and characterize me, and satirize me and insult me. Make your videos. Knock yourself out on Rumble or YouTube. And if it rises to the level of defamation and I'm in the mood, maybe there will be a reason to respond to that in that on that avenue. Um, but um, but all's fair in love and war. If I'm going to make public videos, then by all means, make your videos. Do your best. But if you go in real life against people, this is again just further confirmation of the depths to which these unscrupulous bad actors will go to get their way and silence criticism and try to ruin people's lives. It's just confirmation. I mean, that's what I'm accusing you of. I'm accusing you of potentially getting people killed. And what do? You look like you're trying to maybe, I don't know, maybe get get me killed or get me to hide in the basement in terror or be worried about the well-being of my family and friends. I mean, really? Because you can't just make a rebuttal, can't just make a video and just show all of the reasons why my arguments are poor. I mean, what kind of fucking pussy, coward, low life losers are you? Excuse my language. There was your ad hominem cussing, Lemmy, but it's not in my essay. Okay, so this is a short essay I wrote the other day. And does everybody, well, I mean, I sort of explained, does everybody know um, thank you, Lauren. Does everybody know the George Santos story? You guys know all of the lies he told and his behavior since? Because somebody like that doesn't deserve, I mean, you'd get fired from any job. Somebody would break up with you if you lied and just completely created a false persona of yourself. But you can get elected to Congress and be a role model for the strongest economy in the world by just completely fabricating who you are, and there's no consequences. That's why I said again, why? Well, let me read my essay. Let me just read my essay. So if you guys know the story, and if you don't know the story, talk among yourselves. I'm sure many of you do and can fill in the gaps. I did sort of briefly describe it before, but this essay is maybe a bit scathing, maybe a bit harsh. So I'll read it to you. So, Admin's Corner. On YouTube, I've tried to port that over here, and I call it Skeptic's Corner when I do share my odd essays. Um, I don't write them as much on Facebook anymore because Facebook has destroyed my distribution. So, where I used to have my original content go out to 50 or 100,000 people, now it regularly gets distributed to less than 1% of my 130,000 subs. So now it goes out to, 1,000 people or something like that. So it's just not worth it for me to do any research or do any original writing over there. But I made an exception because I was annoyed. So, Admin's Corner. Why do they do it? Everyone asks. George Santos and every other amoral, ambitious, and opportunistic demagogue, politician, influencer, entrepreneur, and sophist. Andy Warhol referred to this phenomenon, anything for a moment of fame and power. Anything. What Warhol didn't contend with, however, was the possibility that in the future, in the near future, that 15 minutes could turn into a livelihood, a very lucrative livelihood, I might add, and a permanent state of being in this world. So thank you, hashtag. Thank you, viral meme. Thank you, social media algorithm. Thank you, selfie, short clip, bite sized reality, TLDR, social silo, misinformation ecosystem bubble, diffusion of responsibility, our tribal nature, and lazy human thinking. The success of Trumpism, radical libertarianism, moral depravity, and lie as personal marketing tactic has gone viral, and all would-be influencers now adopt it as a permanent strategy, a permanent life strategy. Why? Well, because it works and because it's so easy. You see, people always prefer a good story to the truth, and we are simpleton, dichotomous thinkers and believers in primitive and regressive ideas like good versus evil, might makes right, and get your piece of the pie. Target a convenient scapegoat or your partisan enemy, and you get bonus points. And add in perverted capitalist incentives, constant adulation and reward for celebrity and money, and very few, if any at all, negative consequences. At this point, the more relevant question is why not do it? And what are the character distinctions of those who don't, won't, or can't? Welcome to post truth and runaway relativism as a way of being in this world, a moral and intellectual strategy for life, an easy way to get ahead. Because damn ethics and integrity, damn a concern for the truth or being a decent person. Society is shredding and atomizing. Where is a shared identity to be found? One grounded in our best bets about how things really are, and better and worse ways to be toward each other. Because any agreement or interest in being a good person these days seems to be fading. The prosperity and celebrity gospel seems to slowly be eclipsing the golden rule.